Hey there and welcome back to Rimworld. My name is Pete and today we complete another episode of Rimworld Odyssey with the, at least in theory, spacefaring Stars of Som. Although, if everything goes according to plan, today we'll finally be able to turn that theory into reality. Now, last time we left off, after exploring an ancient stockpile here in the extreme desert, we encountered dormant insects, dangerous traps and ancient defense turrets, but ultimately came away with precious riches, including a valuable gravcore that will help us expand our gravship and prepare it for the journey into orbit. And with that ancient stockpile cleared out, we are also pretty much ready for liftoff. We're only collecting a few last resources here, and then in the early morning hours, with the sun rising over the desert, it's time for launch. Now, even though we have our sights firmly set on space, our current gravship radius is unfortunately not quite large enough to get us where we want to go. We still have the ancient satellite here, but I don't think that's the best way to start. I would much rather prefer to explore a more peaceful asteroid first, so we'll have to get a bit closer to it to reach it with the next launch, and we also want to settle on slightly more fertile ground. The arid shrubland here should suffice. There's a small creek running through it, and it is another one of those biomes that we haven't actually explored in any of our series on the channel yet. Because we accepted that toxic waste dump quest last episode, we now also receive a faction relation penalty. Unsurprisingly, the locals do not take kindly to us polluting the environment. For a change, our young pilot River then does not have the smoothest of landings, breaking 3 of our 4 small thrusters. We have plenty of components stockpiled though to repair them. On the plus side, our landing also reveals the location of yet another gravcore, unfortunately not on this map though. As you can see, it is actually quite far away from our landing position over to the east here, so it's unlikely we'll pay it a visit anytime soon. Meanwhile, we plan on getting things set up quickly here. Our hungry animals are released onto the grass. The arid shrublands are actually much more fertile than people give them credit for. Sure, trees may not be as abundant, but overall this is a very livable biome. Nonetheless, at this point we have the means to speed up our growing of rice quite a bit. We already have 20 hydroponics basins, and we plan on getting at least 1 harvest out of them before we lift off again. We're also doing some hunting so that our meat-loving animals get their fair share and we gain a bit of shooting experience in the process too. Nailgraph has a bit of a close encounter with an ostrich here, but luckily Brent and Kyla shoot it down before it can harm him. At this point then, we begin what is without a doubt the largest gravship expansion project in this series yet. I'm trying to maintain the vaguely froghead-shaped outline, and this is pretty much as large as we can go at the moment. To expand even further, we would need to acquire more gravlight panels, and at least for the time being, those are in rather limited supply. Thankfully, the map has several steel veins close to our landing site, so a steady supply for everything we need should not be an issue. The deciding factor here will most likely just be time. And unfortunately, it does not look like we have an unlimited amount of it, as just in that moment a mech cluster lands nearby. Now, it starts off dormant, which is great, otherwise we'd be in deep trouble here. However, it also comes with an EMI dynamo that activates in 2.5 days. Once it does, it will shut down any electrical devices on board of our gravship, at which point it pretty much becomes a necessity to lift off and leave again. So the clock for our building project is ticking. Thankfully though, as you can see, we are making good progress. Since it is also highly unlikely that we'll run out of steel anytime soon, we can already queue up the construction of the new gravship hull. Once more, not much changes here, it's just going to be slightly larger than the old one. At this point, we can already start moving things around. The thrusters get a new home. All 4 of them are now fully functioning again, although the grav engine itself will of course still need to cool down again before we can launch. The interior design portion of all of this then actually took me quite a bit of planning. On one hand, we have a deceptively large amount of space to work with now, but at the same time, all of the gravship's angles and corners are not the easiest to plan around. So if you have any ideas for improvements that we can make, feel free to leave them down below in the comments. Our teenager River then also goes on a food binge. It's actually been a while since she had her last mental break, and that's not the only thing we need to worry about at the moment. Cat and Saber also both come down with the plague, and I distinctly recall that being a life-threatening issue for Saber in the past, mostly because her left kidney is still suffering from chemical damage. Nonetheless, for now treatment is going well, and on the next morning we're constructing some mortars. We have acquired a few reinforced barrels in our journey, and while they may not remain in this exact position forever, for now I think they could play a vital role in the gravship's defense. As we then overhaul our common room, we also start bringing in our first rice harvest. In terms of room design, we will of course try to maintain the spaceship aesthetic. Things will not necessarily be as cramped as they were before, but building space still comes at a premium, and we have quite a few new facilities that we want to cram in here. One such facility that Alex is currently in the process of closing off here is the shuttle bay. Unfortunately, I could not find any plasteel on the map, so it will be a little while longer until we can actually build the shuttle, but I thought that here in the back, close to our storage room, seems like a practical place for it. Moving on then, we overhaul our kitchen and freezer. Even though it is not a perfect setup, everything will remain in one room for now, and that room will actually be fairly small, just fitting in the stove and a few shelves. On the plus side, that will make it a bit easier to cool. Our storage room meanwhile moves to the ship's southwestern corner here. I am actually not quite sure how much room we will eventually need for it. We've had a recent lack of traders, so we are currently carrying around a lot of useless stuff that I eventually plan on selling. As soon as the next caravan or orbital trader stops by though, I think the situation will improve. Now, at this point, we also want to take a note of the fact that our current ship layout is actually larger than the grav engine permits. Luckily, in the last episode, we obtained a gravcore, and we also have just enough gravlight panels left over to now construct a grav field extender, a device that will increase the total maximum size of our gravship from 500 to 750 tiles. Just as we queue up its construction, we are also informed that the Hisa Mark II is now ready to be launched again, and we are in fact also in our final stages here. The entire ship can now once again be moved as one. Up next, we install a small workshop area, and we will also begin overhauling our sleeping quarters. A few seconds later, however, we are met with a sudden loss of power, and this is actually no surprise. The mech cluster's EMI dynamo has now activated, and we should probably try to escape its influence as quickly as possible. Not only is an unpowered gene bank a slight concern, but so is an unpowered nutrient paste dispenser. Our freezer is also no longer getting cooled, and overall there's not really much we can do here as long as all electrical devices are shut down. So we hurry to carry back whatever steel we have left on the map. At this point we can also take a quick look at Saber's health. The plague treatment is working as intended, and she will live to see another day. In the evening then, everything is loaded into the gravship's cargo hold. I had actually hoped to be able to make the trip to the asteroid right from this map tile here, but a few more preparations are needed and we need power for those, so another brief pit stop will be necessary. Now, on the world map here, you can see the white outline. That is the range of the EMI dynamo. So we want to land outside of that, and due to a distinct lack of chem fuel, that does not leave us with too many choices. But exploring a chasm landmark is always intriguing, so we'll stay in the arid shrublands just a little while longer. So here we are then, although unfortunately we arrive at night, but at least we can use the power inside of our batteries as we now begin to set things up for another brief layover. Our animals begin to graze and we put up our hydroponics basins for one harvest cycle. 2 wind turbines will help with energy production, and while we wait for our grav engine to cool down and for our rice to mature, we can continue working on the gravship. Up next we install a small hospital unit. To get us started, we are satisfied with only 2 hospital beds. Alex's high-level construction skill produces some fine results, and once everything is in place, we then also move around the beds in our barracks. As you can see, we actually have a decent amount of space in this area, but at the same time it's not enough to build satisfying individual bedrooms for everyone, so for the moment we'll keep things cramped together. I believe that is the most efficient way. We will very likely need to step things up by 1 or 2 more size categories until we can build something more private. So on one hand, while our barracks remain tightly cramped, this clears just enough space to install an onboard laboratory, and with that I believe we have every important facility now on board of the ship. Time to shoot some gazelles to celebrate. Following a successful hunting trip, Kyla, Brent and Nelgraf head back on board, where we now work on installing steel tiles everywhere, while the barracks actually receives special treatment on the following morning. Here we are going for the slightly more expensive but also much more beautiful hex tiles to hopefully make up for the rather cramped nature of our sleeping quarters. Other than that, things remain fairly uneventful. In the background we are also chopping a decent amount of wood to turn into chem fuel. We want our 2 chem fuel tanks to be filled to the brim before we set out into space. At this point, let us also finally install the gravship shield generator that we obtained as a quest reward at the beginning of the series. Unfortunately though, putting the grav engine over to the other side here does not work quite the way I had hoped it would. But after a few more rearrangements, I think we have a design that works and also leaves some space for a small classroom area. Then we receive a quest from the Empire to construct a monument, something that we really don't have an interest in, especially not with a size of over 30 by 50, even if the rewards here could kickstart some psychic powers, a gameplay element that I haven't really made up my mind about. Let me know in the comments if that's something you would like to see in this series too or not. Slowly but steadily then, everything is taking shape. You can see it here, we have plenty of wood still scattered around the gravship. Saber is also working on not 1 but 2 steel veins nearby. Our chem fuel reserves meanwhile are still lacking at the moment, but as soon as we bring that wood on board, that will likely change. To round out our onboard facilities then, we construct a tool cabinet and a drug lab. I think we should slowly start working on leaving the days of herbal medicine behind us. After all, in just a few short moments, we will hopefully be proper space travelers. For now though, the rice is ripe for the harvest. The hydroponics farm here is of course currently the only thing we do not have space for on board, but as long as we return to the planet's surface in regular intervals, we should not have any issues. Now at this point, we also want to very quickly change research projects and prioritize standard grav tech, which will unlock the construction of large chem fuel tanks and, even more importantly, large thrusters. As we are then informed that the Hisa Mark II is ready for liftoff, we install a few last devices to protect us from the vacuum of space, some heaters to keep things warm inside, and 2 oxygen pumps. Yes, we do have a vac barrier at the gravship entrance, but should that cease to function for whatever reason, it is probably a good idea to have a backup just in case. In the early hours of the following morning, we can also watch Brent finish a vac suit, a full body armor specifically designed to protect against the vacuum of space. As you may have noticed, a few vac suit helmets have already been distributed. Now we are going to give both suit and a helmet to Saber here, our resident miner, who definitely needs to spend some extended time outside the gravship in a moment. First of all though, we are interrupted by yet another mech cluster. Once again though, it is thankfully arriving in a dormant state, and from what we're seeing here, I think we can safely ignore this. Once again, we are about to leave soon anyway. Saber meanwhile, now equipped with vac suit and helmet, can not only withstand temperatures of almost minus 100 degrees Celsius, she also has a vacuum resistance of 100% and will therefore not suffer any ill effects from vacuum exposure. Now at this point then, we already lead our animals on board just a tiny bit earlier, and we also activate our turrets, and then, just in time, the research of standard grav tech is complete. Like I said, this now allows us to construct large thrusters. We'll continue with advanced fabrication for now, and at this point the game informs us about vacstone, a unique material needed for the construction of said thrusters, a material that we can only find on asteroids in space. So things are slowly starting to come together here. As our final act of business here on this map, we are now going rhino hunting. With 4 gun turrets as backup, we should not have any trouble doing so. And this will create a nice meat and therefore food reserve, just in case we need to stay in orbit for longer than planned. Eventually then, once the animals are all butchered and the meat and leather is hauled back on board, we are ready to launch. At this point, we also turn off any device that consumes power and is not strictly necessary for the survival of our pawns. In space, we will have to power our entire gravship with only 2 solar panels, so we'll have to be a bit more conservative with our power consumption. As River and Nelgraf then make their way over to the gravship's pilot console, we finally prepare for our first journey into space. Our chem fuel tanks are filled to the brim and the asteroid here is well within reach. It contains both vacstone and traces of uranium ore, and since we don't get any red warning messages here, the game considers us well prepared, so let's begin the journey into orbit. So, once more we land accompanied by a thruster breakdown, but those will be easily repaired. Much more important than that, we have arrived at our first asteroid. Now, as you can see, it's not a huge place, and the vacuum of space makes it freezing cold too, so except for a few select colonists, we will stay inside of the gravship. This is essentially a mining operation in orbit. Saber ventures out to chop into the asteroid's vacstone, while we turn on the heaters, and then mostly spend our time waiting. Now, vacstone is quickly mined just like any other stone type in the game. It too needs to be transformed from stone chunks into usable stone blocks, which can then also be used for construction or artwork. The only unique property they have is that they are the only stone type used to craft graphite panels and the aforementioned large thrusters. Now, of course, we also experience the day and night cycle up here on this asteroid. After all, we are not millions of kilometers out in space. The planet's surface can still clearly be seen in the background. Now, our goal here is to collect about 25 to 30 of these vacstone chunks, and due to her high-level mining skill, Saber is making rapid progress. At the same time, though, we try our best to keep the rest of the crew busy as well. Brent is tailoring some new clothing items for our 2 children, Cat and Furion, while River and Nelgraf unlock advanced fabrication. This means we are now able to manufacture advanced components, and I think we're going to need plenty of those soon. Up next then, let's unlock advanced graph tech, which will allow us to make our own graph-lined panels, as well as the gravcore power cell, a fully autonomous power source that only relies on a gravcore. We are also already beginning to turn our vacstone chunks into blocks. While Saber continues to mine, Alex helps with the hauling. Together with a vac-suit helmet, her marine armor provides a vacuum resistance of 99%, so as long as we don't keep her outside for hours at a time, she will be totally fine. Costing only 50 vacstone blocks per unit, at this point we actually also have all the materials needed to construct 2 large thrusters. Obviously, down here in the hospital, they won't help us at all, but putting them in place will require breaking open the gravship hull, and I think that's a task better performed once we have a stable atmosphere again. As you can see, we can also construct and install up to 6 of these, and that is in addition to the maximum number of 4 small thrusters, so over the course of the next few in-game days, you can expect our gravship's range to be expanded substantially. On the next morning then, Saber's vacstone mining efforts are already concluded, and we can watch as both Alex and her make their way through the asteroid's old mining tunnels. A few ancient mining charges are still in place, but as long as we don't damage them, they won't harm us. With Alex deconstructing a mechanoid ship chunk for graphite panels and steel, Saber now goes to work on the various uranium veins found on this asteroid. I think we should easily be able to find about 300 units worth of the stuff here, even though the process is of course slowed down quite a bit by the fact that we only have 1 miner and 1 hauler. Some mechanoids could help alleviate that problem, although as long as we don't find a mech link, that remains a pipe dream, and so far none of the maps we have landed on had one. On the next morning then, we are already in the final stages of our asteroid adventure. While Nelgraf receives a taming inspiration, Saber has found the last uranium vein. Of course, were we to go all in and strip mine the entire place, there's a chance we find more, but considering how much uranium we already have, I don't think that will be necessary. Near our landing site, we also have some mechanoid slag chunks that we can smelt into steel, and you may have noticed it already, we also have a decent number of hungry animals, so from the last bits of rice we have, we are making some kibble, even though that will unfortunately not feed all of them. Then we are informed that our grav engine has cooled down sufficiently, and just as we watch Alex haul back some uranium, we also finish advanced grav tech. So I would say things are looking up for our small gravship crew, and with Saber and Alex now gathering the last few bits of uranium, and with over 700 vacstone blocks already stored away and 2 large thrusters already constructed, I would say we've reached a pretty good point to make the cut in today's episode. Our first trip to orbit was a full success. The Hisa Mark II has been substantially improved and expanded, and that will only enable us to go on adventures that are even further away. As always, I hope you join me for those in the next episode, and if you like this one, then I would be very happy if you could leave a thumbs up. If you like what I'm doing and want to support me and my channel further, then you can of course also go ahead and subscribe to stay up to date, grab some merch over on shop.petecomplete.com, or become a channel member or Patreon supporter. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time. Cheers!